There's Deb.
All right, we're live.
Okay.
Do you want me to hand this back to Village of Trumansburg?
Sure.
There we go.
Okay. Click record. Hi, Deb.
Hello.
Okay, so we are live streaming and recording, so I will call to order this special monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees, June 22nd, 2020. Are there any changes to the agenda? I do have one item under new business, which is a brief introduction. And Keith, I just sent you an email about it. A brief introduction to Executive Order 203, which relates to police departments. So we'll just discuss that briefly under new business. Anything else to add or subtract from the agenda? If not, then I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing on local law. Tammy, what number?
You're muted, Tammy.
I have to look. I think it's 5, but hang on. Six.
So I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing on local law 6 of 2020, which is an amendment to our 2015 local law, which is our open container
Right.
law.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And just for the record, and for anyone keeping score at home, this amends section 3C3 of local law 2 of 2015. And it's not that long, so I'll just read it. That section will now say, I won't read the old one. The section will now say food and or beverage establishments may maintain outdoor seating for patrons on village property, sidewalks or byways, provided that the establishment has applied for and received an outdoor seating permit from the village as created by resolution of the village board, renewable annually, subject to a fee as established by the village board to maintain outdoor seating on public property, wherein the outdoor seating area is clearly marked off with removable ropes, chains, barricades, or stanchions of an all-weather type. A sketch plan of the outdoor seating area is submitted with the outdoor seating permit application, outlining the dimensions and seating capacity of the outdoor seating area, but this requirement is subject to waiver by action of the village board. Outdoor seating allows for minimum ADA required space for pedestrian traffic to safely pass. And outdoor seating area and related ropes, chains, etc. are removed and or stored nightly in such manner as determined or amended by resolution of the board. The establishment may only serve alcoholic beverages in the outdoor seating area during hours as determined by the board. The establishment maintains and provides proof of liability insurance coverage with minimums as stipulated in the application. And the establishment names the Village of Trumansburg as an additional insured for the period covered by the permit. There's actually been some development. The governor issued an executive order last week, I think it was, which extended the liability for anyone with a liquor license from the premises governing the liquor license into the public right of ways outside. So it actually, one of the reasons we have this proof of indemnity requirement is because a traditional liquor license only covers the indoor premises. So now restaurants and bars actually, by virtue of their liquor license, now are already responsible for out front. But in future years, that may not be the case. So we'll have our law to require that some insurance is shown. And I don't see anyone from the public present. I don't know if there's any board conversation, questions, comments.
I'm excited.
I
to
can-
be inside.
I can just reiterate for those watching this that didn't maybe see the top of the month. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. We need to help the local businesses out as best we can. And I'm certainly wary of personally eating inside just at this moment just yet, but outside seems to suit me fine if things are spread out well. So I'm looking forward to making use of this, hopefully.
Just waiting to see if we get anyone from the public to show up in the next 30 seconds.
If they do, how do we properly welcome them? That'll be a cheers.
I think we can I think Zoom can play a chime of some kind when people join.
There you go.
Rorden, for the sake of the recording of this, do you want to offer kind of a summary of where we were at, and why we're doing this, and how we think it's going to help everybody? Just the elevator.
Sure. So, Cliff Notes version in 1978, at the encouragement of the first police chief in Trumansburg's history, the village board adopted an open container law, which essentially said no open alcoholic beverages would be permitted anywhere in public rights of way or public property within the village. That law stood intact and unchanged until 2015, when 2 or 3 different local establishments wanted to offer some outdoor seating. There was some concern at the time about what that would mean in terms of noise, and would it be food only, food and beverage only. And in an attempt to kind of take it slow and make baby steps towards accommodating it, we developed the existing open container law, which replaced the 1978 law. It continues to be illegal to carry or serve or consume alcoholic beverages in any public area, except in the situation where there's some type of formal event or village sanctioned events that allows for wine tastings at the farmers market, for example, and as well in relation to a restaurant which is serving food during food service hours, they could also serve alcoholic beverages. That is what's in place now. And my thought post-COVID and trying to encourage as much business as possible, also cognizant of the fact that the Finger Lakes Wine Trail seems to be extending to the south slightly. We have a microbrew in the village now. There is soon to be a wine tasting room from one of the local wineries, which is going to host or hold their wine tasting area in the village in a rental space. So it's good for everyone, I think, and from an economic standpoint, to encourage that. So this amendment to the law allows for more flexibility at the discretion of the village board without having to constantly hold public hearings to change a local law to make minor adjustments. So that's the medium length Cliff Notes version. And with that, I don't see any members of the public joining, so I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on local law number 6 of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So then I would entertain a motion to adopt local law 6 of 2020 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none then, all in favor of adopting local law 6 of 2020, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, local law 6 has been adopted, which takes us to the very next piece, which is first item under old business, and that is the restaurant seating regulations that we want to have in place for this year. And the draft has a lot of whereases, which establishes the desire to assist local businesses as best we can in conjunction with New York Forward. The first resolve, I won't read the whole thing, but the first resolve states that outdoor seating permit shall be issued to any dining establishment that completes the application, submits proof of insurance. It states that there is no fee to do so in 2020. We are waiving the requirement to submit a sketch plan of the proposed seating area. And the only thing that we need to determine is whether alcoholic beverages may be served, or what the time frame and what the cutoff is for outdoor service of alcohol. If anyone has a sense of whether it's 10 p.m. It doesn't get dark till 9, a little quarter after 9 now, so 10 p.m., 11. We do have to kind of keep in mind, I think, noise, but I think health department gathering sizes will probably help to contain some of that, since we have the need for physical distancing and whatnot.
Yeah, the outreach I did about this was basically, as long as we're serving food, we'd love to be able to serve alcohol. So, so I think for some places that probably would be maybe 10 o'clock. I'm trying to think of the places that would utilize that mostly.
How late is Garrett's open? Is it 10? Are we not sure yet?
Nine. Not maybe 10. Yeah, maybe 9 or 10 on the weekends. They definitely don't go later than 10.
I'd be in favor of 10 then. I think if we're going to open this up, we go as much as we can. And if it's too much, we pull back. I don't want to be conservative and have people not use it.
Yeah. So what does that exactly mean? At 10 o'clock, we stop serving, but they can sit there and drink their drink until midnight?
No, in theory, it means that at 10 o'clock, there's no consumption of alcohol outside of an establishment, which actually does not speak to establishments with private parking lots. This would only be for sidewalk seating. Because technically now, based on the governor's executive order, the private parking lots fall under the liquor license, which would normally have not extended out into the parking lot. So in theory, those folks can serve until 1 outside, which is interesting. That's, I think, I don't know if anyone thought that part through when the governor issued that order, but technically parking lots would not fall under a liquor license, but now they do.
Assuming the restaurant owns the lot, right?
Correct. And I'm not suggesting we allow for service on public sidewalks till 1. I'm just making a mental note that parking lots are not, don't fall under our law or these village regulations.
I would say 10 o'clock is fine. I think that's late enough. It's with food.
And so the one or two places that don't have food, they will be able to serve as well, but will also maintain the 10 o'clock.
Mhm.
I guess the one thought is, if you're a restaurant / bar that makes a good chunk of your money off bar service, which basically nobody can offer right now. There's nobody at your actual bar counter. uh, where you would serve those people until 12 or 1. Do we want to give them the opportunity to keep doing that with outdoor tables? Basically, they can, you know, I don't know, can we write it so as long as we are in certain phases, the hours can be longer? Because right now I think they can only have 50% indoors without, and they don't have their bar counter open. So if they were able to keep serving drinks until, well, let's theoretically say 12 or 1, that's added revenue for them. But I don't know how we feel about alcohol consumption that late at night on the streets. From a business standpoint, it would help those that aren't food service places that make their revenue through drink service.
I think midnight or 1 feels like a stretch. I don't think going past 11, practically speaking, I don't know. Just thinking of the handful of places that do have food, but then close the kitchen.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards 10 myself as well. I'm just trying to think of, you know, the folks, a lot of our main street has residential on top and not wanting to bother people too much. I feel like 10, yeah, kind of splits that. Go ahead, Keith.
Am I correct that our noise ordinance law is kicking at 11? Is that right? Or is it earlier than that?
It's 11 is what I recall.
11, 7. But
I believe
bar noise doesn't get to that kind of decibel level to even kick in the noise ordinance.
Well, yeah, I guess that's what because I'm wondering if keeping the cutoff consistent with that makes sense. Or do we think it's more likely to be more disruptive than typical backyard noise might be for other houses?
I think my inclination would be to go as late as we possibly think is comfortable. And if it becomes an issue, amend again. I mean, I know it's tedious and obnoxious, but if it becomes an issue, I mean, I don't expect that the crowds will be large. People will still be distancing somewhat. I do not imagine this becoming a sort of free-for-all on Main Street. I think we're pretty safe as far as noise goes, and if we're not, if it becomes an issue where we receive complaints, we can edge it forward. The other thing I would add is that we may want to stipulate, you know, that the ropes and the chairs and all of that is broken down and stored at 10 or 11 or whatever we decide, because that is not specified, I don't think, anywhere else.
It used to be. I don't know if it's still in there, but it used to be.
I mean, the law we just passed, or the amendment we just passed, says we can stipulate by resolution how we want that to be put away. But yeah, not to throw another wrench in it, sorry, but
Yeah, I thought I'd seen something about that somewhere, but I lost track of it.
There is somewhere.
Yeah,
And I know
the-
it seems to me when we did this before, when we wrote the original one, there was like Tom or whoever was the code enforcement officer was taking care of that, making sure everybody was putting their stuff up. But it seems like one of the restaurants had bought like really like weatherproof, expensive, heavy furniture, and then moving it in and out every night became an issue. So just keeping that in mind, that has been a problem before.
yeah, I think, and Silverline had barrels that were pretty immobile.
And that it may have been Silverline actually.
Yeah, the one thing about noise and crowds is all the outdoor seating is under health department regulations in terms of the distance between tables and how many. I think it's maximum of 10 people per table. If the table is large enough, all the groups have to be 6 feet apart. So those pieces already cut down on
Especially because each restaurant only has so much frontage. So, I mean, we're not talking about a huge number of people. Like,
right.
I could be convinced to push it to 11, align it with like our current kind of Nor's ordinance. Not like, again, not that it's actually in triggering that, but kind of conceptually they're somewhat similar. And yeah, to put it out there and say, to the extent that we can kind of get the message out, like if people don't kind of self-regulate, right, then we'll be forced to come in and maybe pull it forward if we have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think Little Venice is probably the only place that's even open still at 11. Garrett's is closed unless people decide to change their hours during the summer or something, but Garrett's is closed by then. If Atlas were to be operational, they're typically done by 9 or so.
right. Well, and they don't really count though, because they'll have a parking lot.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with 11, I think.
Deb, any thoughts?
I'm okay with any time actually. It's like I should abstain since I don't care one way or the other. 11 o'clock is fine with me. 10 o'clock. Whatever is best for the businessman.
Then I would entertain a motion that we adopt the resolution as presented in the document in the Dropbox with the amendment of the second to last resolved, stating that alcoholic beverages may not be served nor consumed in any outdoor seating area after 11 p.m.
Don't move.
Second.
Do we, Ben, you had pointed out the idea of removing, storing, securing the ropes and whatnot. So I think it's in the open container law, but it says that we have to put it in the resolution. We have to stipulate what that looks like. If I'm reading this properly. I'm
It's actually in the third to, it's a little, the language isn't the language may be a little bit cumbersome, but it's in the third to last resolved, which says that the requirement to submit a sketch is hereby waived for 2020. However, all the other provisions, including securing the seating area
Oh, I see. Yeah.
and allowing for ADA required pedestrian spacing, remain in effect. It does leave it open to some interpretation what that means to secure the seating area. I guess if you bolt it to the ground, then it's secure. If you carry it inside, it's also secure. But if you just
Right.
stack plastic chairs and let them blow into the street, then that's not secure. So I think that's
fair. That just because the open container law says the outdoor seating area, this is A4. Outdoor seating area and related ropes, chains, barricades, or stanchions are removed and or stored and or secured. I guess, yeah, it's okay. Any of those things then. Secured, I see your point. It's a little open interpretation, but I don't mind leaving it. As long as, to your point, it's not going to fly around or apparently get in someone's way.
at least for this year, this executive order kind of puts it all on the establishment, since the liquor license governs now. As long as they maintain space on the sidewalk, 4 feet for people to pass, and 6-foot separation of any seating area. I don't think anyone's going to jeopardize their liquor license.
Okay, I'm fine with it as it stands.
Any other comment or edits on this year's regulations? Okay, so we had a motion and a second to adopt those regulations. If there's no additional discussion, then all in favor of adopting them as amended, please say aye.
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 Keith,
Any
unmute.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Item 4B under old business. As you know, the Cemetery Road Bridge down at the bottom of Cemetery Road by Lake Street, the town of Ulysses had applied for some grant money to redo that bridge or replace the bridge, and the county is overseeing it. There's a whole lot of people involved, but there is the Word document in the Dropbox under 4B is a property release that the county and the town are asking the village to sign, which essentially just states that there's, and you can look at the latitude and longitude, there's a specific piece of land that will need to be disturbed in order to do the renovation and replacement of the bridge that is specifically owned by the village. And we need to formally grant permission to the town, its contractors and designees to disturb that property. So unless there's any thought that there would be an issue here, I would entertain a motion to authorize me to sign this property release.
Yeah, I would move that we authorize Gordon to sign that document.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
Any updates on timeline from them? Has it been moved back because of?
No, not really. They're still in the engineering and design phase.
Yeah.
But there weren't any COVID-related delays because it was all essential municipal infrastructure work.
Yeah.
Any additional comments, questions? If not, then all in favor of authorizing me to sign this property release agreement, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Last item under old business, Keith, I believe, has an LED street light update of some scope.
Yeah, so I emailed everyone kind of the breakdown of where we're at, what our next step would be, and that next step being, are we willing to agree to have Rorton sign the purchase agreement submitted by NYSEG to begin the process of acquiring our streetlights. The process of review. So NYSEG has, I think, can take up to several months to respond, and then there's another review period that can take 2 to 3 months. So if we do hope to move forward when NYPA is ready to begin installation, I think we should probably at least start this process as soon as possible. Once the agreements are signed, that's when we will begin the process of acquiring the financing from NYPA. They are close to being able to present us with their what they call 90% design. So basically they do 90% of a design, and then that remaining 10% are customizations that we would put into it for unique to the village. So that's all a little further down the road, but none of that, that the again, the installation, if we're still all in on this, cannot really move forward until we sign this agreement and begin the process of purchasing the lights, which I believe is a price tag of just north of 16,000. But again, the upfront money is provided by NYPA, and then we're essentially in an agreement with them.
Any questions for Keith? So we've been on this track for a couple of years now. at least. It's finally getting to the point of actually buying some lights instead of just talking about buying some lights. So I would entertain a motion then to authorize me to sign the agreement with NYSEG for the purchase of the street lights with funding from NYPA.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional comments or discussion?
There's I think it would be a good time for, and I spoke to him a couple weeks ago, Casey from NYPA, about coming back and just kind of giving us all a nice deep update on where we're at and the timeline for everything. He just encouraged us to take this step as soon as we could, but perhaps for our July meeting, he would join us and just give a little bit more detail about where everything's at.
Okay. If there are no additional comments, questions, or discussion, then all in favor of authorizing me to sign the agreement with NYSEG, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. New business. I missed something at our regular meeting 2 weeks ago in this list of things that MRB had requested that we consider. We had authorized some new televising of some sewer lines, and we'd authorized a continuous flow monitor proposal. But separately from that, DEC has requested, I put that in quotes, DEC is requiring that the village perform a sewer capacity evaluation study, which is meant to determine what the increased flow to the sewer plant would be from a completed project at 46 South Street. They're requiring us to do this to not only see what the increase would be, but to make sure that the sewer plant can handle it. MRB has submitted a quote to do the study to the tune of $9,800. I say it is a requirement, so I don't know that we have a choice. Our choices would be, one, we could always bid it out somewhere else if we felt that we wanted someone other than MRB to do it, but they certainly know the village very well at this point. The other option, too, which I think we should consider, is under the existing developers agreement that is in place with Ithaca Neighborhood Housing. They are reimbursing the village for all costs incurred specifically due to the project. So given that the DEC is requiring this of the village, I don't know if we can insist that INHS pay the whole freight. We could certainly ask, but I certainly think it's reasonable that they at least split the cost. So that's two pieces here. One is to, we will need a resolution to spend the money out of, and I did check with Dwayne, this is not subject to permissive referendum, but it would be coming from a sewer reserve line to spend the $9,800. And then separately from that, just on principle, how much do we want to ask the developer to reimburse the village? We can certainly ask for all of it, and if they balk, then we can split the difference, or we can move right to splitting the difference. So, thoughts or comments?
Can you say a little more like the background here? I'm just trying to understand why the DEC is asking, so I can understand kind of who's responsible for this, if that makes any sense.
Good question. Let me dig up the email while if there's another comment. or question?
I have a comment. First of all, I thought that we actually had this conversation. We certainly had an informal conversation with MRB about capacity and us being able to meet that capacity. I understand that they now wanted to formalize that with for the DEC. So I feel like we've done our due diligence, therefore the developer should pay for it, unless, and this occurs to me, unless we can get a larger scope than just Crescent or 26 South Street out of it. Look again at the entire capacity, including all open land, and reevaluate at a larger level, not just that development. What we were assuming that there's more capacity to be had somewhere else and within the residential areas. I don't even know if that's possible. Well,
so yes, Deb, we have had these conversations with MRB. They have told us that the sewer plant can certainly take on an additional 70 units, given that we have close to 800 in the village producing X amount of flow. And then they basically did some rough math that says that if we call it 80 units out of 800 is 10%, and 10% increase of our daily flow volume is X, and we'd still be under our permit. So we certainly have had those conversations. To Ben's question, whenever a development project is done that includes sanitary sewer connections, the engineering reports for what that infrastructure looks like has to be submitted to DEC for approval from the developer. April 3rd, I get a letter, and I wasn't sure why I was even included in it, but the village got a letter from DEC stating that DEC has received plans and an engineering report dated February 21 for the proposed sewer extension associated with the Crescent Way subdivision within the village of Trumansburg. Based upon DEC review, the following comments need to be addressed. And there are 6 items, all of which were specific to the project. But number 1 was that the report states that the design flow is based on 146 residents and 50 nursery school students and staff. Based on a review of the report and plans, it is unclear exactly how many buildings are being constructed, what the capacity is for each building, and they want a revision of the report that includes various descriptions. And I'm just reading something very quickly here.
and it sounds like it was never meant for us to begin with.
It was never meant for us, except that it's our sewer plant. That's how we ended up in this loop.
Right.
Yeah, and they're also asking for a flow management plan. So it's because of the engineering submission that needed approval that we got looped into this. So I think that does speak to what Deb is saying, that probably should be the developer's expense.
Yeah, I think I'd start there. See where we go from that.
Okay, well, I can certainly, I mean, really what it comes down to is we'll spend it, and then we've been submitting quarterly project-related costs incurred by the village to the developer for reimbursement without any issue. I haven't tallied up the total in a long time, but it's big dollar amount. So we'll just include that in the reimbursement receipts for that quarter. So the actual sewer capacity evaluation proposal is 5A in the Dropbox. This is MRB's document. What they will do, the project overview, what the scope of it is. And the total price tag is $9,800. So I would entertain a motion to spend up to $9,800 on this
Yep.
sewer
So moved.
capacity evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Tammy's going for a walk.
She's there.
I'm having a
Um,
hard time sitting still.
Then hearing no additional discussion, all in favor of spending up to $9,800 on the sewer capacity evaluation, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm waiting for Tammy to take the meeting on horseback.
Giddy up,
well,
giddy up.
It's funny. It's funny you should mention that.
Yeah.
See right back there. Look at that.
They were
Nice.
whinnying. That's where I was going.
I
We
hear you,
should do
Tammy.
that
It's hard to
sometime. That would be
it's hard to sit still with all this excitement around sewer evaluations.
well,
Okay.
the dogs are quiet, kid is quiet, the horses are not quiet.
The next couple of items under new business, one is on the agenda, the other is not, but they're both related. We have outstanding serial bonds. That's SERIAL, not CEREAL. We have outstanding serial bonds from 2007, which is the Ghost of Main Street project. The bonds, and we could spend a long time getting into the weeds on any of this, but essentially there's $2.045 million in serial bonds dated October 11, 2007. They were callable when issued, and the first
Hey,
callable
girlie.
date is this October.
Hey,
Who are you saying hi to, Tammy?
not you, sorry.
Uh-huh. So the interest rates in 2007 were significantly higher than they are today. So we have the opportunity to call these bonds this fall, basically refund them early and issue new bonds. Municipal Solutions, which is our bond advisory firm, is suggesting that we do so. And in order to get all of that done by this fall, we have a little bit of a timeline here. We need to approve it tonight if we're going to do it. We need to send out an RFP to a bunch of different investment banks tomorrow. We need to get their bids back by Tuesday, July 7th, so that we can approve them at our Monday, July 13th meeting and get all of this done. It's an estimated savings of, I had the email here a second ago. It's an estimated savings of $135,798 over the remaining life of these bonds. It's about $9,000 per year. That's after all fees. So that's what lower interest rates
Yeah.
do for us.
So basically it's a refi.
Yes. It's a very complicated, very expensive, very lucrative for the investment banks refi, but in the end, the village does save $135,000 over time.
Sounds like a deal.
Any cons? Or risks?
Cons.
The amount of effort it takes to get anything
Writers-
through all the way.
Writer's cramp from signing lots of documents. Some Wall Street investment bank will make some money off of the village. I don't know. I guess those are the two cons.
Well, I look at it this way. If I had a 7% loan on my house, I'd refi it now. So it's still, it's $135,000. You can't really.
Yep.
Look a gift horse in a.
So then I would entertain a motion to authorize the issuance of the RFP for the reissuance of serial bonds to refund the existing 2007 debt. Or words
So
to that
moved.
effect.
Second.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? As a part two and slightly unrelated, but as a part two to that, we are due to. No, I thought this was a renewal. It's not. It's a contract that's being submitted by Municipal Solutions in connection with this proposed refunding. They charge us an hourly rate, but the scope of the contract is to advise on the timing, assist with the RFP. Those two they've already done. Work with bond counsel and the underwriter to develop the refunding bond schedule. Secure services of an escrow agent. Work with attorneys, coordinate board adoption, prepare the official statement. Basically, all of the regulatory check boxes that need to be done. Services and activities associated with this transaction. It's a fixed price of $21,000, which comes out of the refinancing piece, I believe. Just checking on that.
And that looks, I mean, that sounds like it's right in line with other efforts we've done here with bond counsel.
Right. So for this, I would need a resolution authorizing me to sign this contract with Municipal Solution for this bond refunding.
So moved.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Tammy, I hope you're keeping track of all these things I've got to sign. The last item
You're
that I
muted.
have under new,
Yes.
the last item I have under new business is just a very brief introduction. So I think probably Keith and I are the only ones that are aware of it. Last week, the governor signed Executive Order 203, which requires all municipalities of any size with any police agency to conduct a thorough review of policies and procedures. And I may as well just hit all of the high points. The executive order requires any local government entity which has any size police agency to perform a comprehensive review of current police practices and develop a plan for the purposes of addressing particular needs of the communities served and to address any racial bias and disproportionate policing of communities of color. The EO further states that the chief executive of local government shall convene the head of the local police agency and stakeholders in the community to develop such a plan. The directive will require public input, community dialogue, as well as a commitment of existing resources to convene this process to make sure that it is inclusive and provides opportunity for meaningful community input and review. After these, the last piece is that it requires this review to be submitted to the local government for formal approval. It's unclear as far as guidance what that means, whether it's some type of a local law or whether it's a document that is approved in some other fashion. And then that needs to be submitted to Albany by April 1 of 2021. Any failure to do so essentially would mean that the municipality could be cut out of future state funding. Now, it doesn't say whether that state's funding specific to the police department or state funding in general. I think state funding in general would definitely be the more interesting one, because most federal funding is allocated to the states to distribute. So that in theory means any non-compliant municipality could be cut out of all kinds of grant funding. In theory, you know, the idea is just fine. We'll see how it works in practice. The county, Jason Molino and Sheriff Osborne are going to try to convene a larger group countywide, including municipalities that have police agencies throughout the county. I have asked Jason, I've asked the county to not only do that, but also develop a template for whatever this documentation that Albany ends up wanting, what that might look like. I could spend some time on my soapbox about what Albany thinks of small municipalities and how many extra staff they think we have to do all of this in their spare time, but I'll spare you all my beating the dead horse, and just hope that the county can give us something that we can work with to save time. Now, interestingly enough, as an aside, Chief and I have been talking since he came on board about something called accreditation. Accreditation is basically where a police agency, any law enforcement agency, complies with and develops rules and regs internally that meet a bunch of different state guidelines. And accreditation is looked kindly upon for grant applications and whatnot. So this actually would be a significant step in that direction anyway. So maybe I'll look at this as glass half full, and we can combine all these efforts over the course of the next year.
So I unfortunately have to interject because I have a tree committee meeting that's happening in just a couple minutes that I have to prepare the Zoom meeting for. So I'm sorry.
Okay.
One thing I did want to just add is that I did speak a little bit with Ben a couple days ago about what I'm hoping we'll get to an executive session. So I'm hoping he'll convey my thoughts on that.
Okay.
You know, and I'll be in touch hopefully by phone with at least Gordon in the near future.
If you have another device, you could try a dual Zoom meeting.
I'm actually running them both now, so that I left the other one open early so that we haven't done a Zoom meeting with that committee yet. So I wanted to give them time to sign in and make sure it works.
You also need a third phone so that you can take care of personal business on the side. It's really effective, I can tell you.
This is
sorry to say, multitasking
meeting
at its best.
Good night, all.
All right.
Good night, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
One thing I did mention to Chief Nelson today is that given kind of the scope of this work that I anticipate based on the governor's order, and if we do end up tying that in conceptually to the idea of accreditation, that he should put together for the board. There are, as you can imagine, there are consulting firms that do a lot of this work. So just as we have EDR for comp plan and zoning, we have MRB for all of the engineering type of stuff, there are consulting firms that help law enforcement agencies draft everything from internal policies and procedures to streamlining best practices for the purposes of accreditation and what have you. So we may hear from Joe in the next month or two about the possibility of taking something like that on. I think if we were ever going to spend the money to have an external outfit help with that kind of thing, this is as good a time as any. And it certainly takes some of the, the administrative paperwork pressure off of Chief.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
Number one, do we have anything coming out of NICOM on this?
Nothing.
And the second thing is we have the police academy. I would think that they're starting with a set of expectations and rules and policies that would be in place that we certainly would expect our officers to utilize, and therefore that would be a good starting point. Hopefully they're documented somewhere. I mean, they're doing training. They must have some documentation.
Yeah, I think my conversations with Chief, I don't want this to come across as cynical, but there are different kinds of police academies. The state police, for instance, runs their own academy. Different counties run their own academies, and the training within a police academy is no other really way to say it. It's bare bones. It's minimum qualification type training, and that's the reason why a police academy graduate is required to have, I think it's 140 hours, some amount of field training time with whatever department they work for. And so the real on-the-job training can be very community specific, can be very department specific, and that's really where a lot of the department by department policies and procedures and best practices should be reviewed and addressed. Our internal policies, there's 40 years worth and multiple 3-ring binders of it, and it does need to be reviewed and cleaned up and brought into the 21st century. So that was going to be part of Joe's efforts towards accreditation anyway, and that's why I say I think this governor's order, although it puts a potentially difficult timeline on it, it pushes us in a direction we were headed in anyway at some point.
Okay.
Any other comments? That was really just by way of update on that issue. Okay. I see no members of the public present, so no need for a public comment period. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a legal matter.
So moved.
So second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Got to turn off some things here real quick.